She's still laughing.
That's so funny. Welcome to 5 Lemons Left. We're the real stuff, the lemons making lemonade. So pucker up, because we're going to be discussing our life's lessons and the nitty-gritty details of our spiritual journeys.
Hey y'all, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Drusilla.
I'm Melissa.
Hello, this is Morgan.
And I'm Penny. Welcome to our podcast today.
Oh my goodness. Welcome everybody. I love starting this conversation off with a laugh. We're talking about high vibration, low vibration, what that means today. And laughter is absolutely a way to shift into a higher vibration. And before we get started, I want to celebrate. We just found out that we have 500 episodes downloaded. I know. That is
Thank you, everyone. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, everyone. Talk about raising the vibration of the world. We are getting her done. Get her done.
Yes.
And being downloaded around the world, which is something that's
random, not random, but it's just exciting. So we just looked at it and it was like someone in Singapore downloaded
10 downloads
people
in Singapore. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice.
So shout out to Singapore.
Shout out. Hello, everybody.
Go Singapore.
Lots of people in Costa Rica.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't remember the other ones.
Canada,
yes.
Brazil.
Brazil.
shout out.
And of course, the good old US of A.
Hey.
All right. So back to conversations about vibration. So I wanted to start with an example of switching vibrations, changing a situation. So Mike, my husband, went back to work at Lowe's recently. And in our lifetime, we've been married to, this year will be 25 years. So I've talked about it before. Thank you. I like to say in my previous life, when we both worked 60 hours a week, a lot. That was life. That was normal stuff. We both worked. That's okay. So we both worked a lot. And while it seemed like the best plan while we were doing it, once we decided that wasn't the life that we wanted and moved away from that, like in retrospect, looking at the stuff we missed out on, this, like the things that we put ahead of work, I started really looking at it, and it's not something that I wanted to do ever again. And so Mike went back he's worked at Lowe's before. So he went to work at Lowe's maybe a month now. And his mom is coming to visit, and like for over a week, she'll be here. And I love his mom. I love hanging out with his mom. And Mike didn't have one day off during that time. And I brought it up, and he's like, well, that's just the way it is. And like alarm bells started going off, like my old stuff started coming up from years ago when I would want to do something and Mike had to work. I wanted to go somewhere. Mike couldn't. He wouldn't take off work, or, just the importance of work got put ahead of everything. And that's a pattern that I recognized in my family too. I perceived my father always putting work ahead of family time. And I went on a tailspin. So we're talking low vibration. And so he goes to work this morning, and on my morning walk, my meditative walk, I was trying just to clear it out of my head because I don't want to rest in that funk anymore. That's just not who I want to be. That's not where I want to live. I don't want to attract more funk in my life. So I'm trying to just clear everything I know just to get the funk out and get the funk out. We need some James Brown playing in the background. I digress. I apologize. So I'm walking by my favorite trees and I just stop. And I just stop and I was feeling really heavy. And I'm like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. I don't want this pattern to repeat anymore. And I just surrender, like the word surrender came to me. And I felt like just really the energy of grounding in the earth. I mean, I really felt a visceral shift. I got home, I got back from my walk and I look at my phone and my husband had texted that he got a day off. And I'm just like, what? You're the greatest husband ever. Like, and it was a real shift, and it is funny, it was a real shift. So that is my shift in vibration and how I really attribute changing my mind, changing my vibration affects my life. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm not a really good poker player. So like, as much as I was trying to like not be mad because like I was perceiving Mike as like going back to old patterns. So, I mean, he knew that I was upset and I was also actively like not trying to blame him, not trying to shame him, like own my stuff, take responsibility for my stuff as best as I could. I'm a human being and stuff comes up. Mm-hmm. So that's my story of vibration. Yeah.
I love that story, Amanda.
Thank you.
Me too.
Thank you. Melissa, you wanted to say something?
Well, some of us here and some other people are doing a book club, and it's we're reading the book "You Are a Badass at Making Money" by Jen Sincero. And so I think if you think about money and how you feel about money, mm-hmm. It's a really good example of vibration. So a lot of people feel a lot of fear. Maybe they feel anger, resentment when it comes to money. It doesn't hold a neutral spot. It's like people have feelings about it, like deep feelings from their childhood. And so I think you can easily do like a check-in on yourself. Like, how do I feel about money? And that is a certain vibration. And then you can go to like the next level of vibration. And so you could be like, hold it neutral. You can give it love. You can have a loving perspective. You can have an abundant perspective, a prosperous perspective. And it's just not what you say. It's really a feeling that comes when you're thinking about money and abundance and prosperity. So I think that's a really good way to like an example of how vibration, you can live with a vibration, a low vibration or a higher vibration. And we have a map of consciousness that if you're watching the slide, you can see. And it's by David Hawkins. And he created this map actually based in science. And I believe he put people electrodes on them and scientifically track their pulse and their, what he would say, vibration. So there are kind of like lower level and upper level or higher levels of truth, a higher vibration, and then the lower levels, a lower vibration. So maybe we could talk a little bit about what those lower vibrations are and what the higher vibrations are. What do you think?
Yeah, for people who are listening and not watching, maybe you could just give like the range of emotions just so they kind of can visualize what we're talking about here.
So like a lower vibration lower vibrational emotions would be like pride, anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt. And I guess the lowest of all would be shame. And we've all felt most of those. And we all know what that feels like in our body. And then you break up into the higher vibrations with courage. And then that goes into neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, peace. And the highest is enlightenment.
And
So
something else about looking at this and what Hawkins was saying, the lower levels of vibration is where disease is present, that sickness comes into play. So it's not just about feeling good. It's also about allowing healing in our bodies. It's about really raising our vibrations so we can experience health and wellness. Yeah.
And I don't you think that it also, like, the lower vibrations seem to be the ego vibrations. I want it this way. They can't have it. I want it. Things that, like, fear-based, all this stuff that we spiral with. And then the better feeling vibration, the willingness, acceptance, love, joy, peace, those seem to be a little more universal, like what we, or godlike, just those things that we want our life to be and we want to feel. What do you think?
It also talks about your relationship, your spiritual relationship with your creator or with source. The lower vibrations, meaning that your relationship or your belief is maybe you don't have one, or it's negative or pathetic or non-existent. And then the higher ones being that it's a more positive, relationship with God or your creator or source, or however you want to describe it. So that's another way to look at it as well.
So as a practical application, if we are living with an underlying shame of something that we did, that we're holding shame about or guilt about, like, how do we shift from those feelings into getting up into a higher vibration, since we're talking about that?
I think that's like, there's practices that you can do. Sorry, motorcycle just drove by. There's practices that you can do in the instant, like you were talking about going for a walk in nature and grounding yourself. And then there are some practices that work more at the root for these deeply seated things that maybe have been with us throughout most of our life. And that's where, like, the forgiveness work comes into play to really, like, get to the core of it. So I don't know if I'm making sense, but you can do something in the moment to shift your vibration, but then there's also maybe some excavation that needs to be done, to some forgiveness work that needs to be done as well, so that it doesn't just keep showing up over and over again.
I've had a really hard time in my life, 5 years ago or so. And I knew about this before. I knew about the scale of consciousness, or the map of consciousness. And I was in a lot of fear. And I used to just think to myself, okay, if I could just get the courage, then I'm shifting out of it. So if I could just, like, if I was scared, like, I don't even remember, like, go out of my house, that I didn't have that, but let's just use this. Like, I was just scared to go out of my house because I had a lot of fear. If I moved into courage and just like acknowledged I am in fear, but I'm going to do it anyways, that really, really helped me. Like I just kept telling myself, I don't need to like get to peace yet, because that's a little bit beyond where I was. I just needed to get courage. I needed to get to courage to walk out of the house, or courage to call someone for help. And that was my little lifeline. It was really helpful for me. And then once I did that, the other parts came. I moved into more love and joy, but I had to get to courage first.
Yeah.
And so there's, sorry, you can go ahead, Amanda.
I was going to say, in my example, really looking at the map of consciousness and my example. So when he told me, I was kind of, once we figured out that he wasn't going to be off when his mom was there, like I really, like anger wasn't the top thing. It was more like apathy. Like it was more like a numbness. It was more like a hopeless feeling, like this is never, ever going to change. Like that was my first reaction. And that is one of the lowest vibrations. And then like after sitting with it for a little bit, I got mad. And that is actually a higher vibration than like guilt, shame, apathy. So like the anger actually brought me to a little bit higher vibration. I didn't want to stay at anger. Absolutely not. But I did have a willingness to really own I had a willingness to own it in myself, to work on the healing in myself. And willingness is a higher vibration. It's like 1, 2, 3. It's like 4 levels higher than anger. So I was dealing with anger and willingness at the same time. And then I like went back and forth in that vibration. And then I was able to surrender. I don't know where that is on the map of consciousness, but it was
Might be in reason.
Pardon?
It might be in reason. You look at that.
Yeah. You released it. Neutrality.
Yeah, I went to neutrality. I had the courage to own it. I was willing to own it. I don't think neutral is a good word for this particular situation, because like there still was charge in it. But certainly like surrender was my main thing, just turning it over. And that allowed a release of it. So that's how kind of, without knowing it, but just explaining the map of consciousness, that's how the example that I told went through different stages.
Right.
Mm-hmm. What were you going to say, Morgan? That was great, Amanda. I like that first, I just want to acknowledge Amanda for what she just shared. Mm-hmm. And I think that, surrender might be under acceptance and reason, because you kind of surrendered to it.
And that's typically my go-to as well. And I'm thinking maybe it's not on there because I think it could be described in my mind. It's described as a way of moving from any of the levels. If you're in awareness about them, if you are aware that you have this feeling of guilt or shame, you can surrender that in order to move up the levels of consciousness. That's how I look at it. But surrendering, through prayer, through whatever means you might use. For me, it's usually prayer or a quick handing over to the Holy Spirit, is usually the fastest way that I'm able to move up through the levels of consciousness. I really like the surrender that you mentioned, Amanda.
I like that. So surrendering it is a tool to move. Is a tool.
Yes.
So if you surrender as a tool, then what are you trying to get to, or what's the feeling that you'd like to have out of surrender?
That's the thing with surrender. There is no getting, right?
You can't have an attachment to the outcome.
That's why surrendering is so freaking scary.
That's why it is no control. You're giving up
and hard,
all control and hard. Yeah.
But are you wanting peace in it? Do you surrender so that you can have peace?
No, it's really this morning. It was just, I just surrender. It was
just done. To be done.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you just got attuned to Mike and his needs as well. And you were in attunement with him. It's a new word that I'm playing with. And so when we really work, especially with the people that we love and we want to have relationships with, so you surrender to the fact, well, he's going to work. And you know that's, I don't know if it's just a need of his to be at Lowe's and helping out people. And I don't know what his purpose is there, to be in service to others. And maybe you attune to that fact that he really enjoys his work. And I'm going to just surrender to it.
I totally get that. And yes, I know he likes to be of service. He likes to go to work. He likes to help people. And that's not what happened this morning. It was more like what Drusilla is describing. It was more like just letting it go completely, all attachments to everything. That's
beautiful.
Yeah.
That is what allows spirit to work. That's the only way that spirit can work, is if you release that, take your hands off of it. And I'm just thinking about something that happened just earlier this week with my niece, who lives with my mother, and she had a situation to arise, and she didn't know how to tell my mother because of all the stuff that's been going on with the family. And she was just like, oh, I just don't want to get her upset. And it actually really made my stomach hurt so bad. Like, I was just like, I don't know where I would have been on the scale. Probably, a little bit of fear, a little bit of, she was in guilt and shame for sure. For me, just knowing and thinking about how my mom would respond, I don't know. But I didn't have the courage to tell my mom. So I told my niece, I said, how about we give it more time? And then I texted her and said, let's just pray about it and hand it over. So that was on Sunday. And on Wednesday, my sister texted me and said, who told Mom? I said, about what? And she said, well, she knows. And it turned out that someone else just, I'm not going to call any names for the sake of privacy, but my mom just found out. And I called her immediately. And she was just like, there's just so much going on. I'm good with it, and we're just going to work it out. And, it was just, I just felt so good about it that I utilized my faith to teach my niece to have faith. And then I texted her, I said, see how God always works things out, And she was just so excited. I mean, she was just like, I want to describe it. I could see that she then went from the guilt and shame beyond all other of the levels of consciousness, right to probably acceptance and love time. Because since then, she was basically text me all day long, every day now, like just in the last couple of days, And so it's, it's just it's a good feeling, and it's a good, just a reassurance. And I think we all have those situations where, like, Amanda, now your faith is growing by leaps and bounds just by that, it's just, yeah, it's just a wonderful thing. And I think this map of consciousness is really good to have when you're down those lower vibrations and you know where you need to be,
Just based on your share, Drusilla, and Amanda's share before that, and you were saying that your niece got to love. Well, I just happened to look at the word above that, and it's joy, and the emotion is serenity. And Miss Amanda, I mean, weren't you writing the prayers of joy, or you were? I think you got to joy.
Yeah, I have
with the trees.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. You keep wanting to call it something, Penny. Yes, I do work with joy. I love, joy is my where I want to live. And I don't know if that would, I don't know if there's a word to describe that. I think it's undescribable.
Okay. Well, that's when
it's off the charts. It's off the charts.
Yeah. You hit a home run if you can't describe it. That's the way I look at it and all this spiritual work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Morgan, a long time ago, you were going to say something, honey. Sorry. I overtalked you.
No, please don't apologize. That was such a good conversation. I love this conversation. I was just going to point out this middle line in the chart, which we'll share in our episode notes for those of you who can't see it. The emotions, the low vibration emotions fall in the level of falsehood is the word that it uses here. And the higher vibration emotions from courage at 200, at level 200 and up, fall in the level of truth. So when we are from pride, anger, desire down to all the way down to shame, we are just really stuck in density, in the illusion, in the dream of separation. And we're not connected to our higher self. We're not connected to God in those moments. I mean, not that we could ever be separate from God, but we're cutting ourselves off from that flow. And then you see the media and the news and all the different things that are functioning literally to keep us down here in these lower vibrations of anger, of fear, blame, all of that stuff. So, yes. So just wanted to point that out because that is also, I think, helpful. And for me, often when I am in a lower vibration, consciously trying to climb the ladder of emotion doesn't work for me. I'm too in my head about it. And I just am attracting, like attracts like, I'm just attracting to me more low vibration emotions. So the best tool for me, if I'm feeling really like in despair or really, really upset, to reach out and ask for prayer support. And we're fortunate that we have our online spiritual community and we have WhatsApp groups and we have avenues to ask for and receive prayer support. But I mean, I know I've seen people on Facebook ask for prayers or even good vibes if prayers aren't your thing. And like that willingness to ask for that and is also declaring your willingness to receive it is what our teacher, Jennifer Hadley, would say. So that helped me to shift. And then as I read the prayer responses that come in, that immediately has an impact for me. I remember before I even ever joined the spiritual community, when my dog Sally died, I shared it on Facebook, I think, and the loving, supportive comments that came in from others, like every single one of them, like really did help to lift me out of that grief and that sorrow and into just like the joyful memories and the love that was shared between us. So that tool of asking for help, declaring your willingness to receive prayer support is a big one for me. And distracting myself otherwise in the meantime, putting on some music, putting on a silly romantic comedy, going for a walk, doing anything to just not percolate on it.
That makes sense, Morgan, just to really just to get out of it. And I do have to admit, sometimes it just, I want to put on a TV show that matches my lower vibration and just for some reason, just waller in it. Sometimes that's just part of life as well. I'm not sure what that is.
There's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Just because somebody's in the lower vibrations doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It's just they're in the lower vibrations. I mean, I don't want to live there, but I do spend time there.
Now that you say that, Amanda, I'm thinking about it. I also like romantic comedies for the reason that they can lift me out of if I'm in a funk. So they can do also that. As well as I love. I know we love to laugh. I love comedy. I don't necessarily love just straight comedy movies, but I love going to comedy shows and listening to comedians. Oh my God. I really get a high, like for weeks, off of going to a comedy show. It totally lifts your vibration. So, yeah.
I love that. And I have actually really intentionally curated my Instagram feed so that it's all like sweet, like animals cuddling or like unusual animal friendships or like spiritual messages of like positivity and things like that. So I can even get on social media as a way to raise my vibration. So that's kind of fun. And I also have a note that I keep in my phone of like A Course in Miracles quotes or any kind of like spiritual quote that inspires me or positive affirmations, whatever. Because if I'm in that lower vibration, all of that shit just goes straight out of my brain. I can't remember any of it. And sometimes just reading through that note on my phone, like it gets me to pause and just I'm consciously choosing to focus on the truth. And I can feel it shifting as I'm doing that. So sounds silly, but it works for me.
Yeah. So my Post-its work for me too. This is the one that I have on my computer this week. Can you see it? All you need is love. Yeah. Helps me get back into that loving space. Yeah.
So anything else on this map of consciousness that we want to go over? No? All right.
Well, you know what it kind of reminds me of for people who may not be familiar with it or can't see it is I'm a psychology major, but without that, most of us have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like without putting the scientific measures behind it, it's kind of the same thing because the lower vibrations are that you have the fear of safety, food, shelter, all of that. And then when you move out, you move into the areas where you have more control or autonomy over how you feel on a daily basis. So it kind of just reminds me of that for people who may not be familiar with this still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like to describe vibrations too as like a radio station. And like, what radio station do you want to tune into? And if your radio station is tuned into something, that means that those people around you, like the signal is stronger, that they can pick up that same radio station as well. So I like to think of vibration as a radio station, and I get to choose which kind of songs or radio stations that I want to listen to, and who, even if somebody else is listening to a different station, like I can turn the volume up on my radio.
I have a good example of that. So I was talking to a friend of mine, a neighbor, and unfortunately she's going through divorce, and she's been separated for the last couple of months. And every time I talk to her, she tells me about somebody else that she knows of that's going through divorce. And I kind of explained to her that it's because that's what's in her awareness. That's what channel she's on. That's the station, the vibration she's on right now. But I don't think it really resonated to the degree that how we're explaining it today. But that's a perfect example of, radio station and being tuned into something specifically.
Yeah. And what I wanted to share, and I don't have the statistics, but I remember in Healing and Recovery, which is the book by David Hawkins, where we first did a deep dive into this material. He talks about how much more exponentially powerful love and these higher vibration emotions are over the lower vibration. So like when you see love is greater than fear, that is in the literal sense, like one person vibrating at the frequency of love or joy or peace, etc., can transmute neutralize or elevate the vibrations of like literally it's like hundreds or thousands of people. I don't remember the data on it, but I love that. And I always come back to this study that, again, I don't have the link right now on it, but about this town who did a legitimate study. It's scientifically accurately done about a group of people meditating on love and how they were able to reduce the crime rate of that town, or there was a measurable reduction in the crime rate of that town as a result of just, I don't know, it might have been like 1% of the population or something like that meditating on love was able to make that big of an impact. So for all of the sciencey people who need the hard data and need the facts and can't just go by faith alone, like I would encourage you to look into David Hawkins' research and work. It's really fascinating.
Any final thoughts or points about this map of consciousness or vibrations in general before we close? All right, Morgan, take it away.
Okay, thank you to all of our listeners. As Amanda said at the beginning, we're so grateful, and we're going to be releasing a new episode every Friday. And so stay tuned for those. Follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram, and check out our website at 5lemonslaughing.com. The number 5 is spelled out, FIVE, lemonslaughing.com. Thank you.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoyed
Great being
it.
with you
Bye.
today.
Bye.
Yes.